Okay, well thanks for coming out, guys. I appreciate it. I'm here to talk about the Navy JAG Corps. I know we've got some 1Ls in the audience and also some 3Ls, so some of the information may be different for each of you, but we can talk about that, and I'll stick around for as long as you want to answer questions. So with the Navy JAG Corps, so JAG Corps, JAG stands for Judge Advocate General, and who that is, that's a 3-star admiral in the U.S. Navy, and she's an attorney. And so the JAG Corps is the 800 of us attorneys who work for her, basically. The JAG's client is the Department of the Navy. So, you know, in the JAG Corps, basically, you're an attorney for the U.S. Navy, and you get a chance to serve the Department of the Navy as sort of a corporate client, a government client, and then you also get the chance, if you're doing prosecution, to represent the United States government in criminal prosecution matters. Or if you're doing something like legal assistance, which we call legal aid, or criminal defense, you get a chance to represent individual sailors and Marines, and potentially Coast Guardsmen as well, in criminal matters, and give limited scope representation for legal assistance matters. So we do a wide range of practice areas. So one of the things about the JAG Corps that's a little different than other legal employers is you don't necessarily specialize and focus on one area. You get a broad range of experience in the JAG Corps, and that starts from when you very first come in. So when you come in brand new to the JAG Corps, the first 2 years, you do rotations through 4 different areas of law. So that's command services, which is on-call legal advice to commanding officers, military commanders, and their staffs. And then legal assistance, which is what we call, it's legal aid to active duty members of the military, retirees of the military, and their family members. And then also you get a chance to go through rotation through prosecution and defense on the criminal side. And so that's your first 2 years if you come into the JAG Corps. So you get that broad range of experience right off the bat. And then after that, the options are even more diverse in terms of the types of law you can be practicing. We have environmental law, healthcare law, administrative law, a lot of criminal law, a lot of criminal law jobs. And it's really, you know, there's no way to know when you're coming in what you're going to get assigned to do. It is an assignment system. So there's pros and cons. It's not a good fit for everybody. So the big pro, what a lot of people like, is you get that broad range of experience. You get that it's kind of the excitement of not knowing for sure what you're going to be stuck with. So you don't get pigeonholed in some narrow area of the law and stay there. You get a chance to move around every 2 or 3 years. And so, if you're doing a job that you love, you're not going to be able to hang on to it forever. But if you're doing a job that maybe is not your favorite, then you can always tell yourself, well, in 2 to 3 years I can do something else. So for some people that's a positive, for some people that's a negative. But it is what the job is that you're moving around every 2 to 3 years to a different job. Maybe you've never practiced in that area of law before, but you're going to get the chance now. So you get an assignment. So that could be anything from international law, like I said, to administrative law. There's a lot of options. So you get a chance also to interact with the side of the Navy that you see in the movies too, and talking about commanders of forward deployed warfighting units. So strike fighter squadrons, talking about SEAL teams, talking aircraft carrier commanding officers, those sorts of things. These are the people that you're going to be interacting with when you're serving your clients and representing the case. So it really is providing a lot of support to the sort of the trigger pulling parts of the U.S. Navy. Bases all around the world. That's the other thing. In addition to moving your law practice every 2 to 3 years, you're probably also going to be moving geographically every 2 to 3 years. Some people, they manage to work it so they can stay in one place for a couple tours in a row, but eventually you move. So we have bases all over the world. If you come into the JAG Corps, your first stop is going to be at one of our bigger offices, and most of those are in the U.S. except for there's one in Yokosuka, Japan, and there's one in Naples, Italy. But for the most part, you're going to get stationed on the big bases in the U.S. So that could be like San Diego, California, Norfolk, Virginia, Washington D.C., and that's where you do those rotations. It has to be one of the bigger bases because again, you have to go through all 4 of the core areas, and then there's a lot of support that goes along with that. So that's why we send you to the bigger offices for the first 2 years. Then after that, then any place where we have legal jobs in the Navy, then you can be going there after your first 2 years. So that could be Horn of Africa, Guantanamo Bay. It could be it could be literally anywhere in the world where we have a naval presence. And if you get stationed on for example, an aircraft carrier, then literally anywhere in the world there's waters where you could be practicing law. So this slide basically just talks what we already talked about, the 2-year rotations when you first come in, go through the 4 key areas of what our core practice is before you go on to the next assignment. But like I said, once you're in the next assignment, then you've got a chance to do a lot of other things that, you know, that are truly unique to the Navy. I mean, there's criminal prosecution and criminal defense everywhere, but when you get to your second tour and beyond, you get a chance to do things that there's no other way to do. I mean, there's no other way to be the lawyer to aircraft carrier commanding officer, you know, to be the one that he's calling when he has legal questions. That's something that really is unique. And, you know, there's other opportunities as well. We have a program where you can focus on criminal litigation if you want. And when we say focus, that doesn't mean do only criminal litigation, but it does mean that you're going to get more assignments in criminal litigation than you otherwise would if you do get selected for that focus. And then we also have postgraduate law education opportunities. So the Navy does pay for people every year to get their LLMs in international law, in trial advocacy, environmental law, healthcare law. So actually, strike that. I don't think we do the healthcare law anymore. But that we do have a robust program of helping people get their LLMs paid for by the Navy, and so that's something that a lot of people like to take advantage of as well. And this, like I said, the military justice career track is great for litigating. The JAG Corps is a really good springboard to get, if you want to start a litigation career, this is a good place to do that, especially if you get selected for the litigation career track, where they're going to put more resources into your training, more resources into your CLEs, and in giving you the workplace opportunities to practice criminal litigation. So this is a good place to get started in a litigation career. You know, there's also a chance to go overseas. Again, this is something that would happen not in your first 2 years, but afterwards. Again, anywhere that we have a naval mission, a military mission, you could potentially be there providing support, you know, as a lawyer, giving legal advice to the people who are tasked with making that mission happen. And that could be Afghanistan, that could be Horn of Africa, that could be Guantanamo Bay, it could be anywhere. So, you know, we have, I mean, this slide's about benefits. I mean, it's a good job. I mean, it's, you know, it's working for the U.S. government, you know, so in that sense, you know, you've got a certain level of stability there and a certain level of benefits there, so that is definitely good. You know, federal employment certainly has its benefits when it comes to healthcare and things like that, and the military is no exception to that. And we also, for the JAG Corps, have a bonus program as well. So after you've been in 4 years, there's an opportunity to be selected to get a bonus. Most people who apply for it get it. And then that's, so your 4-year commitment, if you do go into the JAG Corps, it starts, those 4 years start to tick down when you show up at your first job. That's the 2 years of rotations I talked about. So you have those 2 years, is the first 2 years of your commitment, then you have 2 more years after that that you owe to the Navy if you sign the contract to come into the JAG Corps. And then after that point, that's when you start being eligible for the bonuses. $30,000 for the first, to re-up for 3 years, that's $22,000 after taxes, and then so on. It's a total of $60,000 to stay in and basically re-up your contract with the JAG Corps. So I know you already know all about this, but you go to jag.navy.mil to start the application process. You put in your information, and you get letters of recommendation. You have to schedule interviews. The interviews are called structured interviews, so it's not so much like the give and take type interviews that some other employers do. These interviews are 6 questions, and you give an answer, and there are 2 people interviewing you, and they each give you numerical scores, and that gets added up. And then that numerical score goes in your file basically, so whether you apply 1 time or 3 times, that score is part of the file that goes in front of the selection board. It's a board of senior JAGs who basically pick from the applicants who's going to be recommended. And so the one thing I tell people about that is to make sure you've done your research before you do the interview, because you only get to do the interview once, and you get that 1 numerical score, and then that's a stamp on your, and that's not the only thing they consider. They don't only consider the score, but you do only get 1 chance to get that score. So if this is something, like I said, and the main thing about the interview is they want to make sure you know what you're getting into. They want to make sure that the Navy lifestyle is going to be a good fit for you, and that you and the Navy are a good fit for each other. And what I mean by the lifestyle, I mean, you know, moving around a lot, changing jobs. Like I said, for a lot of people that's a positive, and for some people it's a negative, and that's the kind of thing that the interview wants to sort of find out, is whether your personality is a good fit for the type of demands that the Navy's going to put on you. You know, for example, I mean, when you're in the Navy JAG Corps, it could be you get a call one day that says, hey, you've got 3 months to uproot everything and move to Japan. And to a certain extent, you have to be okay with it. I'm not saying it will happen, but it can happen, and it does happen. And when you go into it, you need to go in with your eyes open, knowing that this is something that could happen to you. And you know, knowing that you know you're not necessarily going to get your first choice of where you want to go and what you want to do. I mean, there are a lot of great jobs in the Navy, and you'll get to do them, but you don't necessarily get to do them in the order that you want to do them, or in the location that you want to do them. And that's another thing that you sort of have to know going into it with your eyes wide open. But like I said, if that's not something that's a deal breaker for you, then the opportunities in the Navy JAG Corps are great. All right, that is quite impressive. So if you have questions, I'm happy to talk. Again, I know we were talking a little bit before we started going about the 1L internship, or the summer internship program, and the deadline for that is in December. So for those of you who are looking for your next summer, this is something I would definitely recommend taking a look at. Have you done one of the summers? No. Okay. It's a great opportunity. I did one. I loved it. They gave me a lot of substantive work to do. I got a great writing sample out of it. It was great. We just had an intern in the last job I was in, and it was with an appellate court. I was clerking, and so we had a summer intern come in, and by the end of the summer, our intern was writing draft opinions, and he would send them out to the judges to have them make their changes and sign off on them and issue his opinions of the court. So I mean, that's a great writing sample that he got out of that deal. So I mean, it's a really good internship. It's not paid. A lot of law schools have stipends you can get. I know when I did it, my law school was able to give me a stipend. I don't know exactly what your programs are, but I would say that really the only drawback to our internship is the fact that it's not paid, but the experience is amazing. And you get to not only see like the substantive part of the legal stuff, but you get to sort of see the other part of what the Navy's all about too. I mean, when I did it, I got to go on some ships. I got to meet a lot of people who, like the ship drivers and stuff like that. Those sorts of, just to see that side of the Navy is really something. Even if you don't go in as a job after the law school, it's still a great experience just to sort of see what that's all about and to meet the people who are doing that kind of work. Even if you don't go on to represent them as an attorney, just sort of meeting those people, it's really it's quite an experience. So do you have questions? Yes?
Is there a lawyering opportunity for the reservists the Navy Reserve component? Or is it all just active duty?
Sure. So for the Navy JAG Corps, the way it works is we don't have a program to commission you directly into the reserves. You have to come into the active duty side, and then when you get out, you can elect to stay in the reserves. And then in the selected reserves, you could then take orders to do temporary lawyering assignments. But there's not a program right now that allows you to go from being a lawyer or a law student straight into being a reserve JAG. The pathway to that goes through the active duty side first. But that is something, I mean, I know a lot of reservists, and they really enjoy it because if you do your 4 years, and then you get out, and then you go do something else, whether it's a litigation job. I know a lot of people that go and become assistant U.S. attorneys after the JAG Corps. I mean, whatever job you go to afterward, you have that opportunity to come back and do part-time work for the Navy JAG Corps, and people, I know, really enjoy that because they sort of get your one foot in both worlds. And I know people who are solos like it too, because it's sort of the part-time pay you get for the Navy JAG Corps is also good for if you're starting a solo practice or something like that, where you want a little bit of income coming in as a cushion for those months when you maybe don't get as many clients as you otherwise would have. So there's, I mean, a lot of people really benefit from having done it and having it on their resume, and then moving on to something else, but then still keeping a hand in if they want to. Or some people, they do their 4 years and they move on, and they don't stay in the reserves. But it's an opportunity, but it's not an opportunity you can go directly into.
Excuse me, the brochure mentions the student program, and it says that it's actually the largest recruiting program for the JAG. For students who are already in law school, how would that application process work?
Right, so that's the one that I explained with the slide about going to jag.navy.mil and getting started. So that the student program is for law students. That's the one that most everybody comes in through. I came into that one, and the way it worked was as a 2L, I applied. You can apply anytime after you have your 1L grades. Now, I didn't get in the first time. I applied to the first board that I was eligible for, and I was not selected for that one. So I kept at it. I raised my GPA, and I did some more extracurriculars, and then I reapplied, and I got in on the second book. I know people that 3 or 4 times it took them reapplying before they got in. So, but basically, you can apply anytime after you have your 1L grades, and the student program is that program. And once you get selected, you commission, which means so after you get selected, then you go through and get a medical screening and a background check, and then after that, you can swear the oath, sign on the dotted line, and then you're in it. But you just carry on as if nothing happened until you graduate. Then you graduate, take the bar exam, and that's when you show up for training. And it's 5 weeks of sort of general military training where it's not like, so maybe you've seen movies about like officer candidate school, like Officer and a Gentleman type stuff where they're doing push-ups in the dirt and getting yelled at, and this is not that. Because in officer candidate school, it's a 13-week course where you're trying to earn your commission, and officer development school is what we send people to, and it's a little bit different because these people have already been selected for a commission. These are doctors, chaplains, lawyers, nuclear power instructors, people who've been selected for their professional skills and credentials and given a commission already. And so they still have to get trained in basically the being acclimated to military life. So how to wear the uniform, just how to fit into the military lifestyle. And so, but you are an officer, you have the commission. So when they're, you are doing push-ups, but then they're like, you can do better than that, sir, or march straighter than that, sir. So they're still like deferential, and it's actually quite funny that they try and put as much oomph into that as they can. But so you get that acclimation. That's 5 weeks. It's not enough to get you really feeling super comfortable with the military lifestyle. If you haven't already been in the military, it's not enough. But it starts the process, and then you go home, wait for your bar exam results. When you get the exam results, you go back to Rhode Island for another 10 weeks of classes on military law specifically. And when you show up for that, that's your first day on active duty. So you're no longer in a reserve status, you're now on active duty. And you go through this class, that's your full-time job, is to be in these classes. And then when you're done with that, then you go to your first job, and that's when you start those 2 years of rotations we talked about. And when you start those rotations, that's when your 4-year obligation starts to run. So that's sort of like how it goes in terms of from application to getting ready to go. The training is, I think the training is really fun, actually. There's a lot less pressure than, like for example, law school. I mean, nobody washes out of this training. That's the thing. These people, you've already been selected. They've already invested in you. They want you to succeed. So this training is all about getting you to where you need to be to succeed at this point. They're not trying to wash anybody out. So it's actually, if you come to it with that mentality of knowing that you just got to do what you got to do and they're there to help you succeed, then it is quite a fun experience. It's a lot different again than it was a lot different than anything I haven't done before because I had no military background before I joined, so it was completely new to me, and I enjoyed it a lot. And it takes place in Newport, which is a resort town. So when you're done with classes for the day, then there's tons of stuff to do. I mean, it's great. So yeah.
So in that time between officer and development school and then you waiting for your bar results, like kind of what is your role? Like, are you back at home chilling, or? Yeah,
at that point you're in a reserve status, and
okay.
You're just doing whatever it is you feel like doing at that point. Honestly, I know people who've taken short-term jobs during that period of time. But yeah, between the time when you're in officer development school and when you go up for naval justice school, you're in an unpaid reserve status. So.
I have another question.
Yeah, sure.
Slip from my mind. So when you were talking about your first 2 years doing that rotation in those 4 different areas, are you in the same, base when you're doing that 4 rotation, or you're not going around?
No, you're in the same
okay.
Geographic area,
okay.
but you move to different offices. Okay. So for example, if you get orders to Norfolk, Virginia, you're going to do work at the prosecution office in Norfolk, Virginia, work in the defense office in Norfolk, Virginia, and so on. Okay. And so you'll move around within the same base, but you're going to be in the same geographic area.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So is there a time frame between, like, say if you go through the student program and you get offered a commission, between the time of the offer and the time that you have to accept that commission? Is there a general time frame, or is it like you have to accept it immediately, or?
I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
question. I know that the recruiting has to do with the fiscal year, which starts in October for us. And so I know when I came in, for example, I commissioned in September, and it was like a thing having to do with the fiscal year. So I don't know the ins and outs of that, but the I believe it's Lieutenant Commander Kadia, the contact for the.
Okay, yep.
You emailed him, so he could probably give you more information about that, about the specifics of it. And once you're selected, then you get a deluge of information about what you need to do and where you need to go to do the whole thing. So, yes.
So as a JAG Corps officer, you're doing prosecution work, but also defense work in criminal matters. What kind of time separation is there between those assignments, and are there any challenges in doing both prosecution and defense work?
That's a really good question. There are issues, obviously, when you're having people go from one area to another. So one of the major things that we do to try and avoid those conflicts of interest is the boss of the defense office is different than the boss of the prosecution office. So, when you are plugged into either the defense service office or the regional legal service office, which handles prosecution, then you're in a different chain of command. So there's no overlap there in terms of who is in your chain of command, who's going to be evaluating your work and supervising your work. So that's one thing. In terms of the time separations, that is a lot of times handled on a case-by-case basis. So if somebody is working in a defense role and they move over to the government role, then we definitely, in a situation like that, would screen people off. It really is, there's not a one fixed policy, but we definitely are aware that that's an issue when you have people moving from job to job so frequently. And so we definitely make sure to screen people on a case-by-case basis to make sure that not only is the institution, they're separated in their chain of command, but that an individual attorney is not going to be having conflicts. But it's, it's a real concern, and something I've had a lot of experience being screened off different cases because I was moving around different offices. And one thing I noticed was that people were very much leaning in the overcautious realm because they just, it is such an issue that we want to make sure that it's not, we maybe in a situation where maybe the rules of professional conduct would say maybe this isn't a conflict of interest, we just, to be safe, in my experience, what I've seen is just to be safe, we avoid any hint of it by keeping the attorneys separated when that's an appropriate thing to do, or keep having an attorney wait until they can take certain cases, or just have them completely screened off, like no information about a matter whatsoever. So we definitely take that seriously. But like I said, the biggest thing is the fact that it's just totally separate chains of command. So it's kind of like going to two separate law firms, really, when you talk about the prosecution and the defense office. Even though we all wear the same uniform, we all work for the JAG Corps. When it comes to who's supervising your work, it is really like we're being in two different law firms.
Could an attorney choose to do just prosecution or just defense if they wanted to?
No, they move you every 2 to 3 years, so you can't do anything to do just anything. And that's when time to figure out whether this is a good fit for you. That's one of the big things to consider. If you're somebody who came to law school, wanted to become an attorney because you have one specific area of law that you're very passionate about and you want to do only this, and if you're not doing this, then you're going to feel terrible, then this is not a good job for you, because you're going to get to move around. If you could say, I want to be a prosecutor, but I'll never be a defense lawyer, then this isn't going to work. If it's, I want to do only environmental law and nothing else, then this isn't going to work. We have opportunities to be a prosecutor and to be a defense attorney and to do environmental law, but we don't really have a way for you to do only one thing and always do that one thing. So again, for a lot of people, that's a positive. They don't want to get stuck doing only one thing for their whole career. For some people, that's a negative, and that's sort of, we talk about trying to figure out whether it's a good fit. One really interesting opportunity we have now in terms of the areas of law we do is we now have a program representing crime victims, so victims specifically of sexual assault and some domestic violence matters. As you know, when you have a criminal case, the prosecutor, he represents the government, he doesn't represent the victims. And so what the DOD has done recently is to establish programs in all the branches where the crime victims can have a representation to help them navigate the system, understand what their rights are, especially when it comes to evidentiary privileges and giving input in the system. And so That's something, we have about 30 attorneys doing that type of work now, and it's a really interesting program. I've not done it myself, I have some friends who've done it, and it's really rewarding work.
And when you're saying crime victims, you mean members of the military who have?
Members of the military who've been victimized by sexual assault or domestic violence, and when they report those scenarios or those offenses, they get assigned an attorney, an experienced JAG who can then sort of help them navigate the legal system. So it's, like I said, the people I've talked to who've done it say it's very rewarding work. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, I'll stick around if you want to talk one-on-one, or I can catch you up. I know you came a little late, so we can, no, no problem at all. So I'll be around, I'm not in a hurry, but thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out to listen to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.